Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host, Tanisha Spain, and joining me in the studio today are two of our old friends. Chuck and Shane are here, and we're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff today. They brought in things to show you. Chuck even brought in a snack. We've got a lot to cover. So before we get into that, let's have them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their specialty and what they love to do. Chuck, we'll start with you.
Okay. Well, I am Chuck Voigt, and I was in various departments at the University of Illinois because of mergers and name changes and whatever. Basically, I was in horticulture. My specialties were vegetable crops and herbs, and I did that at the university for 27 plus years, and now I've been retired for 7. It's kind of amazing.
No, way to brag. We were just talking about retirement before the show and how I can't wait to...
Here's a newbie.
Yes, right. Yes. Just grinning ear to ear, might I add.
Ways, Chuck. Teach me your ways.
Shane, if you wouldn't mind introducing.
I'm Shane Coulter. I'm one of the family owners of Country Arbors Nursery in Urbana. I've worked there for 27 years as one of the family, and I grew up in the business. I've been on the show since, I think, 1995, so I actually grew up here as well. So I've pretty much spent my entire life answering questions about plants and gardening. And I think over 27 years, I've learned a couple things that I could share.
You know, we've got to find some footage of you from '95.
Yeah, I have a tape,
and do a
videotape in my room. So Kaizet and I, Kaizet Arani, again, an original cast member, we had this idea that we were going to be like This Old House, but of gardening. So PBS allowed us to take a camera out and record us. Hey, Kaizet, what are you doing today? And it was fantastic, but it must have not been super fantastic because they didn't let us do it very long.
It's on the cutting room floor.
But I had a lot more hair there. I was probably a little bigger. I've actually gotten a little better shape.
We're going to have to do a
But it was,
side by side.
I mean, it's been 27 years. It's been a
90s.
while. But yeah,
wow.
I love it. This is what we do for fun. Now that I'm retired, I actually do it for fun, and I used to do it for business. So good
Awesome.
times.
Well, welcome to both of you. I know folks are excited to have you here, so let's jump right in. We've got a question off the top that we're going to ask, and both of you are going to kind of talk about this one. This was an email that came in. Bear with, it's kind of a long question. I had 3 large black walnut trees cut down. I would like to place 2 raised garden beds, and they list the dimensions there, over the area where the trees were. The black walnut trees were located by a cement driveway. On the other side of the driveway, flowers, ferns, grasses, volunteer tomatoes, and an Easter lily grew fine. I had another raised bed that had flowers and the large tomato plant there that grew fine. Across the cement driveway, let's see, there's a little typo there. I am aware that black walnut trees send out a poison or toxin to deter other plants from growing close to them. What is your advice regarding placing my raised beds on top of where the trees grew? That was a mouthful. So, Chuck, this is one of your specialities.
Right. Shane and I were discussing this ahead of time, but yeah, I'm the, as of last year, I'm the black walnut king. So, and as I was doing research last year, I found out that the roots of the black walnut trees, even though they're cut down, as they decay, they're gonna release juglone, Juglone, which is the allelopathic chemical that helps walnuts establish space within a woodland. You know, it discourages competition, which is why they've had, are fairly successful. Shane and I think agree that in a raised bed, as long as it's a fairly deep raised bed, you probably can grow things there. You wouldn't want to try to grow them in the soil because as those roots decay, you're going to get a lot of juglone, maybe more.
Once it's cut down, it seems to release a little bit more. But as we said earlier, I don't think it comes up. It's going to leach down. Right. So I think getting things above that level, you're probably going to be just fine. And the more distance, obviously, the better. That's why things across the driveway, that divider has done that as well.
Right.
But the positive is that wood was probably stunningly beautiful. So whatever got cut down, hopefully you shared in that wood a little bit. And the trade-off is it doesn't like competition, just like you said. And so that's the toxins that are in that ground. And so I was kind of joking with Chuck that we always used to recommend to plant underneath that is to start with something cheap, something that just to test the waters, put the canary in the mine first and do it that way.
Yeah. Well, last time I was on, I brought the rolling pins that my friend turned from a walnut tree that the super derecho snapped off.
Yeah, I love to tell my grandfather had one outside his house, and he has an entire room that it's paneled all in black walnut that he did all himself.
I bet that's
the whole
beautiful.
tree, the whole room. So anytime you walk in, anytime I hear black walnut, that's all I think of is my grandfather took down a tree and made a room out of it. So it's stunning.
The only thing that scares me is the thousand cankers disease that's threatening black walnuts.
Yeah.
But for now, we're okay.
We could have shows and shows over things threatening trees.
Now let me ask you this. I know there are a lot of feelings and opinions about weed screen. Would you use any in this instance in the raised bed?
Yeah, we said this earlier. I think to divide it up, to have something that breathes, and yeah, absolutely. I do that kind of anyway, just to line the bottom, something that allows water to go through, but not things to come up, because we know that perfect soil draws roots. So I always tell a story. I planted this. I couldn't get nothing against underneath a maple. The maple was always taking all the water, roots growing it. So I planted a pot. And all of a sudden, I noticed the pot was even going dry. The maple had gone in the pot and completely filled the entire pot. So that kind of screen will prevent anything else from coming and taking that perfect soil.
Yeah. It's kind of like willows seeking out septic systems.
Yeah, absolutely. They're not going to break the septic system, but they will find the break.
They're going to tap in there, huh? Life will find a way.
Absolutely.
Okay, we've got lots to cover. So Chuck, we're going to start with you. It's mid to late January. We're thinking about seeds. We're thinking about winter sowing. You may have already done some of that. So my favorite type of gardening is inexpensive gardening. I love when you can, the lunch meat containers. Ella talks about those all the time. I love when you can just find things at home and grow seed in them. So Chuck's going to talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, I brought in some what I like to call garbage can horticulture. I didn't bring any pineapple tops or avocado pits, but we can do that another day. But just things that you would throw away, or it's good to think of some way to reuse them. You can plant seeds in an egg carton. These are fantastic, maybe for starting seeds, but also for cuttings.
Oh, sure.
They're deep enough to have medium down here. As you're starting, you can have this on fairly tightly, and then gradually loosen it up until the cuttings are rooted and ready to go. Certainly, something like a Chinese carry-out container.
We've all got them, right? Put them to work.
If you're going to use something like a Jiffy 7 peat pellet that expands, you can stick those in there. I did, I think, a dozen of those peat pellets in a coffee cake clamshell. And even milk containers you can use.
Now, do you do much winter sowing? I know a lot of people swear by the milk jugs outside.
Not really, but certainly you can use those for early season when you cut out the bottom and put them over a tomato plant, and then you can take off the lid during the day and maybe put it back on at night to try to give a little added protection. But there are just all kinds of things. People have sowed seeds in half eggshells.
Yes.
And the perfect container for that would be to set them in there. The one thing you have to be a little cautious of is drainage, because if you put it in one of these with no drainage, then you have to be more careful about how you water them, because you don't want them sopping in water. The same thing, you could sow seeds in here and put that on to keep them nice and warm while they're starting. But then as soon as they come up, you kind of need to loosen that up so that they don't get damping off because it's too humid in there. But
I like this because it encourages people who may be just getting started. You don't have to have the latest and greatest and everything, from the catalogs to grow seeds and grow plants. We've all got this stuff sitting around. So if you don't have those things, we all eat eggs and drink milk.
The other thing is, if you worry about the plastic that you get when you go out and buy bedding plants or whatever, you can reuse those in most cases. You'd want to clean them up and give them at least a 30-minute soak in a 10% bleach solution.
They're not good. So many products now are blown plastic that you can't recycle them, so you might as well recycle them or reuse them.
Right, because especially if you have like the solid ones as opposed to the ones that break up into 4s or 3s or whatever, those clean up very nicely. But you can do the little ones as well. And the nice about the little ones is you can soak them in a smaller thing, so you don't need a gallon of bleach and 9 gallons of water to do them in a horse
And it doesn't
trough.
cost you $1,000 like this does right now.
Yeah, maybe not the egg cartons right
That's
now,
one of the most
right?
expensive containers you'll ever buy at this point. Yeah.
Speaking of the latest and greatest, that's it right now.
I actually brag about how cheap they are here in Champaign as compared to
California and other things.
Yeah, my sister's friend in Washington State.
That's the first thing I saw. That's what I thought. I looked at the eggs and I go, that's a lot of money sitting right up there. Hope it's full.
Not to brag, but I do have hens.
Yeah.
So,
See
and I've gotten a lot of calls from relatives. Hey,
imagine.
how's
Now
it
you're
going?
popular. Hey, you got any eggs? Yeah.
So Shane, since the last time you were on, we've gotten a lot of questions about your lights. People loved them. I think Chuck called them the Medusa. The Medusa lights.
The half octopus.
But here's one question. This is from Christine. She sent an email. Can Shane give us more information about those LED lights? I can't find the one that he has. And then, like I said, just on Facebook and in other places, people were really intrigued by your setup.
It's a real game changer. You know, we're talking about covering the tomatoes with that can or with a milk jug. You don't have to do that anymore. Like, you're trying to get a jump because you can't grow anything inside very well. With this, you can. So this is a 40-watt full spectrum light. So, or 200 watt rather. 200 watt and full spectrum. And so full spectrum means it's getting all the different colors of light that you need. So for instance, there's red light and blue light. And the red light is for your flowering and your fruiting. And the blue light is more foliage-based and growing roots. And in the old days, you used to have to actually change the bulb. You would buy the blue, or you'd buy the red, or you'd buy the full spectrum, but it'd be really expensive. And the bulb itself would be more than $30.
Wow.
A really good grow light that you'd use here at the university was $300 to $1,000, a professional setup. So it was very, very expensive. But then LEDs came out, and the cost is way down. But you do have to run these a longer time. So people don't realize it. To do just like I have a pepper plant that I get peppers off every day, and it needs to run 12 to 16 hours a day. So it is a long period of time, but it's LEDs. It costs nothing. It costs pennies a day to run. And then as far as the wattage, you're going to find some that might be a little bit lower, 40 to 200. This tends to be more, and that's just because there's more lights, but it also means you can have more plants. So that means you can put it around that, and you can turn it on any side you want. You can, like, I have a really tall plant, I face it up, so it's super versatile. They're on sale for $30 I saw on Amazon. So this is still on there on Amazon. Amazon obviously changed the world as well, and we like to keep things local, but it's pretty hard to beat these prices when it comes to growing plants. I've got variegated monstera, which is one of my favorite plants, and a cutting is $200 or $300. It's putting on one every week now. Last winter, it was just like trying to keep it alive. Same with hibiscus. And on this one, again, there's a timer. This one I spent a little bit longer because it has a timer. Because like I joked before, if you forget to turn it off, your house glows like you're the old marijuana grower from the 70s, you know, where their houses always glowed. Or the basement, basement window is always on there.
Basement windows are like beacons.
That's all legal now, all good. And there's actually more money in growing really good peppers right now. But it is, again, it is available. You want full spectrum. I'm sure there are ones that you can probably get that you can change the light if you want more fruiting, but really full spectrum does the trick now. And it's super cheap. And you know, I saw when I went back to the nursery, I was going in looking at, they're doing some work inside, and I look, and the employees all have different forms of these in their windows now. Because before we put them in the window, but some people had lesser light offices. Those people all have these in there now.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it's just really a game changer.
I had a question when I saw you do this the first time. Do they come in other formats?
Yeah, so
like something more like the
100%. So there's longer ones that you can put underneath a shelf. So there's some people like to grow on shelves. So there's the long bulbs. There's some that are a hanging one. I know some people want more decorative. So they'll actually change out the lights that are above their countertops in the kitchen. So the other ones will look a certain type of bulb, but this LED will actually be a full spectrum. So it looks the same as the rest, but it's actually giving the good light for their plant, so they can have a plant in the middle of the kitchen with no windows growing there.
Jennifer Nelson talked about those. She had them installed underneath her cabinets where all of her herbs are growing on the countertops.
So smart.
lighting, ambiance, and
And it's actually functional.
yes, and it's actually
Yeah, so
functional.
every form of LED. LED, again, I've got these LEDs in my garage they look like a helicopter, and they're all lights. You're blinded when you go in there. My wife said, our garage is so dirty. I go, it's always been that dirty.
You can just see it
You
now.
can just see it now. And my plants, I mean, I have a lime tree. It's never been so lush and green during the winter. Again, we all have these hibiscus and lime trees and all these things that we're trying to just barely keep alive. No longer. $30 to $50, you got it covered.
Interesting.
Super.
Very interesting. Another question. This one is about shaping up some hydrangea. This is from Peggy. She says, I have a row of limelight bushes that are very tall. Let's see, big clusters of blooms. They're beautiful. But when there's wind or heavy rain, the stems bend over and they do not ever straighten back up. Every spring, I prune the bush to about a foot high, and every summer it grows back the exact same way, never branching or becoming fuller and less vulnerable to being bent by the weather. Is there any way to encourage it to branch and become less tall and more full?
Yeah, so she's kind of causing that lankiness by taking it back so far. So every year she's bringing it so low that it's going to grow all those long limbs right back again. So my suggestion is what I like to do as soon as spring comes and you start seeing little buds, to trim it more to shape in that 3 to 4 foot. It's going to get to 6 or 7 regardless. So if you trim it to 1 foot, it's getting to 6 foot and lanky. If you trim it to 4 foot, it's growing to 6 foot and less lanky. So mine is to get a better stable frame to it. So take it 3 or 4 feet, trim it to shape, and get a nice heavy structure so that you just have smaller, thinner branches, so it won't flop nearly as long. And it'll still bloom. It'll still do all those things that she wants. It just won't be coming from this tiny, imagine like holding a stick from up here or down here. If you're holding from down here, it's wobbly. If you're holding it from up here, it doesn't move as much.
Excellent analogy. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So we are talking seeds. The catalogs are rolling in if you're into that sort of thing. Some people are strictly nursery. Some people are seed people, or both. But we need to talk schedules, when to do what, when to start what. So Chuck is going to tell us what we should start and when.
Well, I kind of went through and I'm sure I missed something that somebody starts and transplants. One time I started beets and transplanted those, and it came out pretty well, but probably not a normal thing. But we're kind of in the middle of January as we do this, and the first group that I have would be from mid-January through mid-February kind of time frame. Things like celery and celeriac, the root celery. The seeds are small, they germinate so slowly, the plants develop so slowly, and they probably should go out in April, so you need to get those going. Same thing with parsley. Onions, shallots, leek, and chives, those things also are very cold hardy, so you can get those out sometimes in many parts of Mid-America in March, depending on when we get that first warm, dry spell. So that's the first group. Probably mid-February. If you're going to try to grow rosemary and lavender from seed, again, they develop really slowly. So I'm starting those in mid-February, with the caveat that you'd be better off to get a cultivar of a really superior plant, because from seed they're okay, but they're not like the super cultivars. It's like Hidcote is a lavender variety, and sometimes it's available as cloned material. Sometimes it's from seed, and the differences are very much. All right, we're getting to March 1st or to March 1st to the 15th. Then you want to get things like cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, kohlrabi, collards, kale, all of those cruciferous crops that you want to hit that small, early, cool weather window with. They develop fairly quickly, so you don't want them too far ahead, but you want them ready, by late March, early April when that window opens. Same with lettuce and oregano. If you wanted to transplant lettuce and start oregano, oregano comes a little faster than rosemary and lavender, but it's still not especially quick. Middle of March to the end of March, Florence fennel, the bulbing type, dill, and then I would start peppers, eggplants, maybe sage at that point. Sage is larger seeds. They come up. They're much more robust seedlings, so that it doesn't take as long. Plus, they can take more cold ones to go in the garden. April 1st to the 15th, I would delay tomatoes until then, because if you start them when you're starting your peppers and the eggplants, tomatoes develop so much faster. You're going to get, unless you have superior lighting, you're going to get long, leggy things that you need to bury most of the stems, and you might, if you had a couple of them, you might get the earliest tomato in the neighborhood, but for really good production, what you want to set out are small little vegetative plants that then attach and grow like crazy.
Take off.
Yeah. All right, you're getting into the middle of April to the beginning of May. Then things like cucumbers, muskmelons, watermelons. You don't want those to be in a pellet for very long, because once they get up and start to get the first true leaf, that's the ideal time to transplant them. So maybe 2.5 to 3 weeks from seeding to transplanting. So you want the garden to be nice and warm by the time you do that. So, depending where you are and how you anticipate the season breaking, you can hold them a little longer than that, but not a lot. Same thing if you're going to do zucchini or squash or pumpkins if you want to transplant them. And the last one in the spring then would be basil. I would start that May 1st to 15th, because they grow pretty quickly, and you don't want them out before Memorial Day most places. And then here's one that's my pet peeve. Don't start Brussels sprouts from seeds until June 1st to 15th.
Okay.
Because they're a fall crop. You can't grow them successfully from those plants that are available in March in the garden centers. They're not gonna make tight sprouts. They're gonna develop lots and lots of that nastiness that Brussels sprouts kind of.
Interesting.
The best Brussels sprouts have that in moderation. The worst ones, I always say, plant them in March and get them out there through the heat of the summer if you want to absolutely discourage your children from ever liking a Brussels sprout. So plant them June 1st to 15th, transplant them in July, and then they grow in September and October as things cool down. Usually you get a little bit better moisture. And by the mid to the end of October, you have these wonderful tight sprouts that are sweet and minimally nasty. And then going forward from that, July 1st to 15th, that's where you want to go back to your broccoli, cauliflower, the late cabbage, maybe Chinese cabbage, collards, kale, especially like flowering kale or flowering cabbage. Those are wonderful. You don't want to get them out too soon, or they get too tall. And then I've had some success in that time period with Florence fennel again. Getting that to grow in the cool days of fall. It doesn't stand really cold weather very well, but you can get some really nice ones. And then a little later, August 1st to the 15th, then kohlrabi, maybe some lettuce. And if you want to grow big, massive amounts of dill weed, just the foliage, August 1st to 15th, plant some dill seeds then. And hopefully the day length is going to be right, so you hit it. And they don't want to try to flower late. They just make these big super fronds of wonderful, mild.
Can I get my hands on a copy of that? Thank you.
It's on my computer.
We don't have much time
post
off.
this.
It sounds like we're going to be planting seeds every day.
I was just
the
getting
whole
more and more
year.
excited with the schedule.
It does. You don't have to do all of those things. You can just do some of those things.
Good.
Whatever those things are your favorites. It's like I'm spoiled because I cut down to 4,000 or 5,000 foot vegetable garden.
Cut down.
Yeah.
Well, this is from like 1 to 2 acres. So that's a big cut.
Yeah.
But if you're dealing with a little patch in the back, you can't do all of those things, but you certainly can do some of those things.
I forgot you brought snacks.
I did bring snacks. Those are meringues that my sister made. They do have pecans in them, so if you have a nut problem.
I thought they were spring bulbs that had dried up.
And thank you, Donna, once again. She spoils me rotten.
Can we still plant these?
Yeah, exactly. Is it too late? Should I put them in peat pots?
Oh, man. That's delicious.
Well,
Thank you.
She wants to ease you along.
She spoils me.
There's a couple of other things on the list, so you got to keep me back.
I'm always ready. Excellent. Oh, sorry. Now my mouth is full. We've got about 2 minutes left. I want to ask real quick, Are there any, there's a question here about best plants for growing on a trellis. So in a minute or so, are there any plants that you guys love on trellises, or that, clematis is one I can think of.
Yeah, we're talking decorative, not.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I have a big trellis, and I needed to cover a lot of space, so I actually used hops. It was a really fast-growing, and I planted a golden one, so it actually had some color to it, and I got hops on it if you're going to make any beer. But it was one of the easiest to grow, best to get a screen. You don't get any flowers on it or anything like that. But then I would just mix annual vines on there, like what's a thumper? The Rudbeckia. It's the one that looks like a Rudbeckia flower, but it's got oranges and yellow. So I'd mix that in an annual flower in these hops, and it's stunning. And it was super quick, and I really loved how it covered it up.
To stay in the vegetable era, Malabar spinach is wonderful.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Got a thicker.
And it's edible as well.
I'm gonna have to look that one up.
It gets little clusters of flowers that turn into little berries, and it's both decorative and edible. So you can kind of
there you go.
Have a foot in both
dual
camps.
Purpose. All right. Well, we're out of time. It always goes so fast. Thank you guys so much for coming in and sharing your time and talents with us, and thank you so much for watching. My mouth is watering. If you have any questions, please send them in to us at yourgarden@gmail.com, and we'll get them answered for you, and we will see you next time. Good night.